And welcome into PressBox Live. I'm Stan the Fan Charles of PressBox and PressBoxOnline.com. And with me, as always, my co-host on these Monday night baseball chats, Ross Grimsley. Ross, how are you?
Doing great, buddy. How you doing?
All right. Why don't you introduce this guy that's our special guest tonight? Because he's
I'd love to do that.
Yeah, you go ahead.
Now, let me tell you, I saw this guy in the minor leagues pitching. I was coaching in Calgary. I think he was in Vancouver. Right-handed pitcher, one of the fortunate people to get in their hometown, which is really good. And I just read this a little bit ago. He was able to get a win, his first major league win. Then 23 years to the day, his son got a win. So amazing. So anyway, our guest, Dave Johnson. Dave, welcome to us, buddy. Welcome with us.
Yeah, Ross, thank you. That is pretty crazy, isn't it? I mean, to think that somebody could actually get, two guys from their hometown get a win. Our first starts at home was my first start at home, August 8th of 89. His first start at home, August 8th of 2012. And we both are the starters, and we get wins 23 years of the day. It's insane to think something like that could happen.
Amazing. How exciting. Yeah, go ahead, Stan.
No, that's all right. You go ahead, Ross.
Okay. Now, I wanted to say, you getting traded here from Baltimore. Now, when you got traded, I know you started out with Pittsburgh. You were with them for 5 or 6 years. You got a cup of coffee with them. Then you had a good year the next year in AAA, and then you got traded to I think you went to Houston and then got traded to Baltimore, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, that call up to Baltimore, when you got that, tell us about it. How excited was you playing in front of your hometown pals and what have you?
Yeah, crazy. And going into that, I did, fortunately, the Pirates were the ones that gave me my chance initially after going to a bunch of tryouts here around town. And Pat O'Malley actually was one of the, associate scouts. I just talked to Pat the other day, actually, and Jim Gilbert, of course. They were running tryout camps. I went, and they wanted to sign me, but Dick Louie, who was the Mideast regional supervisor of the area at the time, just for whatever reason, he wouldn't pull the trigger. So, fortunately, Bob Dawson, who was the local scout for the Pirates, even though Consoli was a scout here for a long, long time, Bob Dawson was the scout at the time because Consoli was spending a couple years with the Major League Scouting Bureau. So Bob Dawson gave me a chance. And it's kind of crazy. Bill Spencer actually had something to do with that too, but because he was bird dogging for the Orioles and the Orioles wouldn't sign me. So he actually ended up getting the local Pirate scout to sign me. But yeah, 7 years with them, I actually did, as you said, Ross, I got the proverbial cup of coffee with the Pirates. After spending most of my time in the minor leagues as a starter, like back then, I went up to the big leagues and I didn't get any starts with the Pirates. They put me in the bullpen, unfamiliar role for me. But I had a couple decent outings, but I bookended the 3 good outings with 2 awful outings, and they shipped me back to AAA. And then the next year, I won 15 games to set a league record in AAA for in that league of the American Association for wins. And yeah, the Pirates promptly released me at the end of that season. So I had an opportunity. I could have signed with the Orioles. I had about 15 clubs contact me. But I just thought, the Orioles in 88, they lost all 107 games. I'm like, some would say that's the time to sign with them. But at 28 to 21 years old, I thought, my best chances with a club that's going to be good. And then if they need somebody, they don't care if you're 19, 29, or 39. They call up the guy who they think can help them. So I thought that was my better opportunity. So I narrowed it down and signed with the Astros. And on the last day of spring training, they ended up trading me to the Orioles. It was a minor league deal. It was me and another minor league player, Victor Height, for Carl Nichols, who was a catcher for the Orioles. And so Carl played a couple years up and down a little bit for the Astros, and I was fortunate enough to parlay that into a little bit of time here with the Orioles, and got an opportunity to do kind of, fulfill that dream and to do it in my hometown team. I was very, very fortunate.
And since we started here with this discussion tonight, Dave, I happened to look your numbers up, and I noticed, I never knew this. I must have missed it. You were originally drafted by the Kansas City Royals. Is that correct?
Well, going through all those different tryout camps and everything, I ended up getting noticed by George Henderson, who George, of course, a lot of people in the baseball area knows George. George was the best man in Johnny Sherholtz's wedding, and Johnny was best man in George's wedding. They were best buddies when they went to Towson State at the time, And of course, we know that Johnny Sherholtz ended up being, the general manager of Kansas City, and of course, a long time with the Braves. But George basically said, "Hey, look, I think, if you come play for me at Community College of Baltimore, basically you'll kind of get what you want. I'll get you an opportunity, maybe get drafted by the Kansas City Royals and get you a shot, and then he'll get what he wants by having me pitch for him for a year at the college." So that's kind of what I did. So I was driving a tractor trailer full time, and I ended up getting a part-time job working at 25 South Charles Street for First National Bank, working midnight to 8, so I could go to school in the morning and play ball in the afternoon. So I did that for 2 years. It ended up not working out so well with Kansas City because the Royals were actually they came to town to play opening day in Baltimore. And I guess it was 81. And so Johnny Sherholtz came to watch me pitch at CCB. And I think I had 2 bad games in my tenure with the CCB. I went 22-2 over the 2 years. Well, I had a bad day that day. And I think he walked away.
That's what you wanted. Yeah.
Thinking George didn't know what he was talking about.
Right.
And, they ended up not even offering me a contract, so I had to go back to school for another year, and fortunately got signed by the Pirates after the June draft of '82.
All right. The time with the Orioles, I know it was pretty special, but you had a really nice season in 1990. You won, what was it, 12 or 13 games in 1990. And then 91, I was looking, who was there an injury problem that started sort of things off wrong in 91?
Yeah, I did have a good year. Obviously, it went 13-9, and I think my last start of 90, I was pitching against the Blue Jays at home, and I was it was 1-1 in the 9th inning, and I gave up a home run to Fred McGriff and lost the game 2-1. And so instead of going 14-8, I went 13-9. And so, things went real well. But I think I started off 91. I think I started off 2-0. And
Okay.
I pitched I know I won my first game in Texas. So I either went 2-0 or 1-0. And then I was pitching in the New Comiskey 91 when they opened up.
Right.
I was pitching against Jack McDowell. And I think both of us went 3 up and 3 down for the first inning. And we had a rain delay. And it was in April. And so it was, kind of cold and chilly and drizzling and whatever. And after about an hour and a half, I went back out, and I guess I stiffened up a little bit and ended up slipping on the mound. And I strained my right groin.
Okay.
I didn't think it was a big deal. I tried to pitch through it. I ended up getting hammered the next 2 or 3 innings in that game. And then I didn't think it was a big deal because I didn't feel it pain-wise. It didn't hurt. But then after that, it just got weaker and weaker. I really couldn't push off. So I tried to pitch my next 2 or 3 games to no avail, didn't pitch well, went in on the disabled list. And, just with rest, I was hoping it was going to get better. And then I realized that, what? I'm sitting on the disabled list. That's what we called it back then.
Right.
And I got these ugly statistics that if I don't pitch the rest of the year, they're just going to let me go. So I felt compelled to
come back.
Pitch.
Yeah.
And even though it didn't hurt, I just couldn't do what I had done previously. And
but you also got caught in the crosshairs a little bit there. We still had Malacky and Ballard, and they were making way for McDonald and Mussina. So you got squeezed, it seemed like.
Well, but you know what? I had an ample opportunity to do what I needed to do, and I didn't do it. So, yes, they were looking to turn the corner, but I think if I go 13-9 again, or even if we 10-10, they're like, okay, he's a back of the rotation guy until we have somebody better. He doesn't make any money. We'll keep him around. But I mean, I think I ended up going 4-8. My ERA was almost double digits. I mean, I just simply couldn't get anybody out anymore. It was very frustrating too because Johnny Oates had taken over for Frank. Frank was kind of my guy. He kind of believed in me a little bit. And when Frank got fired, Johnny Oates took over. And for whatever reason, Johnny didn't think that I was very good, and he was
Right.
right, but I was tricking him for a little while, and it ended up being to where I remember sitting down and having a conversation with Johnny and Rowan Heeman, and I was like, look, I said, I don't understand. Look, I'm ready to come off the disabled list, and you're not giving me a spot in the rotation. And they were like, well, Johnny was like, well, just because you were the leading winner last year doesn't give you an opportunity to, get right back in the rotation. And I was like, but you don't have anybody else here pitching well either. So it's not like, you got
Yeah.
Mike Messina in his heyday. Mike Messina wasn't even there at this time. He didn't come up
Right.
until, another
July.
month
Yeah.
after that. So, and I don't think he liked me. And so therefore, for whatever reason, he didn't really give me that opportunity. But whatever opportunity I did get, I didn't do well. It wasn't because of Johnny Oates. It simply was I didn't pitch well because I just couldn't. I thought I could go out and trick him, but what I found out at that point was, and Ross knows this as well as anybody, when you're not physically right, and I don't mean 100% because there's not too many guys once you leave spring training that are 100%.
Right.
But when you're not right, when you're not where you need to be or where you can be, you especially with my talent, what it was, you just can't compete at that level. And we see it all the time. When guys are injured, you just don't see guys that can be effective when they're not right.
Yeah, that is really tough. And that brings up the next thing. You pitched several years in the minor leagues. You had some success there. You pitched, 5 years in the big leagues. You had some success there. Over that period of time, especially now and with Steven, when you were talking to him when he was coming up, what are some of the things you learned over that period of time and in the minor leagues and major leagues that you passed on to him or that you could pass on to other people, especially now?
Well, I didn't learn what I really needed to learn until I was done playing. I became a lot smarter and understanding it, 4, 5, 6 years after I was done. And I don't know whether it was because of me being hard-headed, which is actually probably the case. Because as you know, I am very strong-willed and very hard-headed. And for whatever reason, I didn't want to hear somebody tell me how to do things. And I go back now and I wish I would have opened my ears and my eyes a little bit more and listened. And if nothing else, tried things. But there was a lot of things as far as different counts go, like all the statistics that we have now, Ross. I mean, simply understanding how important it was to throw strike one. I know now, and I was able to tell Steve over and over and over again until he probably got sick and tired of hearing it, how important it was to almost, I don't care if you have to throw it underhand or right down the middle, throw it over on the first pitch. It's so important to get ahead. And you see the batting averages against when guys are 0-1 or they're 0-2 or 1 as opposed to 1-0-2, 0-3-1. It's not even close.
Yeah.
I didn't understand that, even though we knew, hey, it's important to get ahead. Well, geez, I mean, you didn't have to be a rocket scientist. But if I'd actually known the statistics and the batting averages and everything behind it, that would have struck me so much more to where I'd have been like, well, wait a minute, this is dumb. I'm not going to nibble. I'm not going to try to hit a third of the play. I'm throwing it right down the middle. And if you don't hit it, I'm ahead 0-1, and now I got you.
Right.
And I mean, I nibbled from the first pitch. I always did because I always felt I needed to nibble. But statistically speaking, I'm not saying, belt high down the middle fastball at 85 mile an hour is the best way to go. But typically I could make the ball move a little bit. So, if I threw it down the middle, it probably wasn't going to be down the middle anyway. So instead of me trying to hit the outside corner to Wade Boggs on the first pitch and he was going to take it because it was going to sink 3 inches off the plate, I should have thrown it right down the middle and let it run 4 or 5 inches to the outside third. And if he swung at it, I'll take my chances. If he doesn't, I'm ahead 0-1.
Well, was that when you had success in the big leagues, even in the minor leagues? Did you do that, or was that?
There's no question. There's no question. When I look back, that
0-0-1-1. That's the time you want.
Yeah, it was because it was one of those deals where I knew that, once those games when I look back and that I was really good and I had the success I was just filling up the strike zone all the time. I was just throwing, and I got away. That last game I pitched in '89 in Toronto. Everybody's like, "Oh, what a great game!" I was like, I had a pretty good movement that day, but I didn't have anything other than the sinker. I had a 2-seamer. That was it. what I realized, and after the second inning, after they hit a couple balls hard, I was like, you couldn't hit a ball out of that place with a cannon.
Right.
So I kept throwing it right down the middle.
Here it is.
They were hammering it, and
Right.
Devereaux's just running them down in center field because you couldn't hit it out of the ballpark. So, sometimes you realize what you have that day. And fortunately, I was most successful when I did get ahead. I got them to kind of, I could get ahead, and then if I could throw that two-seamer and get on top of it pretty good, then I had some success because I throw the ball low in the zone. And I'm already ahead 0-1, 1-2. They have to swing at it, and I'll get a lot of ground balls that day.
Right.
Dave, I'm not trying to bring this up as a controversy, but you alluded to Johnny Oates didn't kind of like me. I mean, I don't think you meant that personally.
No, not personally.
No, okay. So my question is, Steve, do you think that there was a little of that with Buck Showalter, that he just didn't like Steve Johnson, the pitcher, like what he brought to the table? Or do you think it was an honest baseball, calculation?
I think there was a lot going on there.
Yeah.
And I don't think it had anything to do with Steve.
Okay.
And leave it at that.
Leave it at that. Okay.
I think some
Because-
things, just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Because now, I talk to Steve a couple times a year. I have him on different shows. I never sense that he's embittered at what happened in Baltimore or anywhere having to do with his career. But I saw the stuff that Steve had, and I thought his career could have been a much nicer career than it turned out to be.
Well, I think I've kind of protected that situation a little bit.
Yeah.
Because there's things that I know that I just never shared with him because I
Okay.
didn't want to put it on him.
Yeah.
And so at this point, if he feels that if he's at peace with what happened, then I think that we'll just leave it with that.
All right. That's fair enough. Hey, the 89 club, I wonder if you see any you're starting to see some similarities to the 2020, what will be the 21 Orioles, that they're getting better, and it really comes down to who they can put out on that mound. Do you see it as sort of similar?
Yeah, I think the only thing is that this club is not as good defensively.
Yeah.
And that hurts. Of course, that hurts the pitching staff.
Yeah.
That 89 club, there's no question there was a lot of things that, people overachieved. Clearly, some guys did some things offensively, but what hurt us down the stretch, like for most part, after I got there, offensively, we kind of hit the skids. But because we had pitchers throw it over the plate and defensively where we were so good, we competed still and had a chance going down the end. And the next year we weren't as good defensively and we were worse offensively, and that's why we took a big step backwards in 91. And then of course some of the pitching went by the wayside. I obviously didn't have as good a year. And even in 89, I pitched well. I mean, I ended up, people probably don't realize in 89, I went 4-2 in August, but I went 0-5 in September, even though I pitched well enough to win probably 3 games in September.
You went 0-5. You went 0-5 in September.
I went 0-5. I had 3 or 4 games where I got hammered, but I had 4 games or so, 4 I think, that I pitched well. And the 89 situation was kind of weird because, I actually made 14 starts from August 1st to the end of the year. I made 7 starts a month. I actually pitched.
That's a lot of starts.
I pitched on 3 days rest 7 times out of 14 starts. Not, that's that's unheard of. And Ross, they used to have 4-man rotations and stuff like that. It was normal when Ross came up, and then they kind of meandered to the 5-man rotation. And I worked on a 5-man rotation my whole career in the minors. But when I came up, Frank was like, "You got Tuesday." And I, and he's like, and I pitched well, and he's like, you got Saturday.
You got Saturday.
Go get him.
I don't think Frank ever went. Let's see, 1, 2. So, and I had no idea. I'll be honest with you, I had no clue until I went back a few years ago and said, "Let me look at that." I'm like, "Wait a minute, I made 14 starts. Did I come up in July?"
How do they do that?
So I actually made 14 starts. 7 of them were on short rest. I think I wore down a little bit. at the end of the year, even though, again, my last game, I actually was one of my best games I pitched in the big leagues. As far as statistics go, I threw, two-hitter through 7 innings. But in the end, yeah, it was a different time, a different situation. So the club that they have now, I think the difference is that defensively, I still kept seeing the same mistakes and some of the simple things like a ground ball to third and the guy overthrow, the first base. And I'm like, that just can't happen. You just can't have guys not be able to catch the ball and throw it.
So that brings me to this postseason right now. What we're talking about when you were pitching on 3 days rest. Here are the Dodgers, clearly the best team from top to bottom in all of baseball this year, and they're probably going to win the World Series. Wouldn't be a total shock if they lose these next 2 games, but they come into the World Series and they basically have Buehler and Kershaw, and they're going to pitch 2 or 3 games will mix and match. How did that happen? And the Rays have 3 starters, and they don't have a 4th starter. I mean, is something unique going on, or was it because of this truncated season?
Well, I think some of it has to do with they can probably bring guys back earlier because they haven't had the workload that they would normally have. At this time of the year, your ace pitchers would have 210, 220 innings. When Ross was pitching, they would have 250 to 275 innings. You know what I mean? So they would kind of be getting tired, near the end. Even though you don't necessarily feel tired. Like, I never felt tired at the end of a season, but I guess I was because I pitched, a certain amount of innings. But then same things, like these guys, you rarely ever go over 100 pitches. I mean, my first start for the Orioles or my first win in Baltimore that we were talking about August 8th, I threw 134 pitches. And again, remember, I said that 14 starts, 7 of those 14, I came back on short rest and was throwing 110, 112, 120, whatever. Well, that's what we did. So it was no big deal. I didn't feel any more tired then than I do right now after golf. I mean, you just kind of did that. You were prepared to do that. But I think now with the workload not being that as much, and especially with this season, the truncated season the way it is, I think they feel like they can bring these guys back.
They can bring these guys back.
Yeah.
That's interesting. It's interesting.
It's kind of, like I'm rooting for the Dodgers, even though I don't really have any reason other than Adam Calera, because I love his dad, Frank, and it's a great story. And Adam's a local guy. And I worked with Adam here a little bit, at my place years ago before he signed. So I'm rooting for Adam. But other than that, I don't have anything into it. So I just hate how the Rays have kind of tried to change the game. And that's why I don't want them to win, because I don't want their theory to win. I wanted to get back to 5-man rotations, guys throwing 120 pitches, and, guys throwing 180 to 220 innings. That's what I wanted to get to. It probably won't happen, but I'm rooting for that.
You know what I've been rooting for, if Ryan Sharif of Tampa pitches against Jock Peterson, it would be the first time that a Jew would face a Jew in the World Series.
Really?
Well, there you go.
That's a true story. It's a true story.
I was wondering that. I thought it might be Omar Sharif. I don't know.
Ross, you got a couple more, and then I want to talk to Dave about the new endeavor he and Steve have going on.
Yeah, well,
I got a couple more regulars.
Yeah, really. I just I know your last year was 93 with Detroit.
Yes.
Did you have any aspirations to go into coaching, or I know you did the little academy at your house doing stuff there?
Yeah, I didn't professionally, because the reason I walked away from the game when I did was because Steve was about 5 or 6 at the time. My youngest Daniel, who's 30, he was probably about 2 or 3. I really was just tired of being away from home. I got really fortunate that after 8 years in the minors, I actually got to the big leagues with the Orioles. So when I came home after the game was over from Memorial Stadium, I got to come to my own house. So I went on the road for, a week, and I came home to actual home, where other guys, they came home, but they weren't home. They weren't from that area.
Right.
So after 2.5 years with the Orioles, when I had to go back on the road in the minors and in 92, and then back on the road in the minors in 93. Went back to winter ball in between 92 and 93 season, which was a great situation. I went back to the Dominican and pitched the Dominican Championship, and actually ended up going to Mazatlan, Mexico, and pitching for the Dominican team. And I pitched opening night against Fernando Valenzuela in Mexico.
Wow.
That was pretty cool. And we
There
ended
you
up,
go.
yeah, and then I came back and pitched the championship game for the Caribbean World Series. We won 3-1, and I pitched 8 innings. Jose Lima was like 18 or 19-year-old. He came in and closed the game. We celebrated for 45 minutes, and they came back and said, "You got to play another game." Because we were tied with Puerto Rico. We were both 4-2, but we had beaten them twice. So before the game was over, before it started, they said, "Whoever wins this game, they'll be 5-1 or they'll be 4-2, and you guys will be tied with them, but you beat them twice, you'll be the winner." So we beat them, and then we had some money transferred hands somewhere down there in Mexico, and we ended up having to play another game.
Yeah.
We didn't have any pitch, and we lost. So we were Caribbean World Series champions for about an hour.
Right.
But yeah, so it was one of those deals to where, Ross, I was really just tired of being away from home. And even though it would have been something I probably would have loved to kind of, dip my toe into, then I realized after a couple conversations that you really kind of were in a worse situation as a coach than you were as a player. As a player in the minors, you didn't make any money, but at least you had statistics to be able to, at the end of the year, go, "Look, here's my stats. I deserve a job next year." But as a coach, if they gave you a lot of crap to work with, you probably weren't going to make those guys really good pitchers.
Yeah.
So therefore, at the end of the year, you just say, "I didn't make any money, and oh, by the way, I might be a horrible coach." I don't know how Ross ended up doing it for all those years, because he did it for a long, long, long time.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll tell you what, that's just something that I realized before I ever did it that it wasn't really something I wanted to do. But I do love working with the kids,
Right.
and I can see how you really did enjoy having those guys come through you at the different levels and then see them have success. And probably more so with the guys that were probably almost like me, the not so talented guys that you were able to kind of help, and you saw them get better and end up doing things that you probably thought that they may not be able to do.
Really? Well, okay. Now you're out of ball. Now you start, you're with MASN. You've done that for a while. And actually, Stan, he got me on at 105.7. He come to me at
DJ got you in there.
Yes,
Okay.
he did. He was responsible for that. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I think we're at the Ripken Gala. Just mentioned something to me, and he goes, "Have you talked to those guys?" I go, "Who?" And he told me, "About what?" But I appreciate that. But anyway, you were doing that, and by the way, very honest, and that's what they need now in all of broadcasting. People to be honest and really tell what's going on. But you can't do that so much now, or you won't have a job. But anyway, you got involved in that. Wasn't going to say it. But you were honest, and you got to do that. The people appreciate it. The fans want that. But again, you did that for a while. You're not doing it. What is in the works now with that, or if anything?
Yeah. Well, Steve is certified with this new On-Base University, which is run by Dr. Greg Rose, who owns Titleist Performance Institute. Golf is so much further advanced than baseball when it comes to the technology and being able to use 3D motion capture and understanding how your energy sequences from the bottom of your feet all the way to the end, whether you're throwing a baseball or swinging a bat or swinging a golf club for that matter. So Steve is, got certified in that last year. He's running the place. I have a facility at my home, which I'm getting ready to put on the market. We're getting ready to open up here, and then probably next week or two up in Bel Air, we'll be opening up a facility. We're going to be doing functional strength training. It's not the typical, here's how you hold a fastball or here's how you throw a curveball or whatever. It's going to be more of the functional strength that's designed to find out where players' weaknesses are and where their strengths are, and then how to obviously get the weaknesses stronger and make sure the strengths are being used properly and in sequence. And it's not something you can tell with the naked eye. That's why we use the 3D motion capture to be able to put the sensors on the bodies and to be able to understand how this actually works. And what you can't see with the naked eye, you can see in a computer printout after it's done, and see how your energy is generated and how it's transferred from each part of your body part, from your stable, mobile joints, and understanding how it all works. It's incredible to me. It's something that I actually, even up until 2 or 3 years ago, was still fighting. I was still going back to yada yada, yeah, right, whatever about it. But now I've actually seen it and see how it works, and going through the training myself to understand it, to be able to train kids. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible, because it gets to the point of, and you know this from coaching, Ross, is that, you know, the worst thing you can do is ask someone to do something they're not physically able to do.
Right.
The problem is we never knew before if they were physically able to do it or not. Now we can find out if they're actually physically able to do what we're asking them to do. And now we don't ask them to do something they're not capable of doing. And when we find out they're not capable of doing something, we know how to train their body to get it better to where now they actually can do it. So we're real excited about it. It's optimalbaseball.com.
The name is optimalbaseball.com. Where
Optimal Baseball, you can reach Steve at optimalbaseball@gmail.com.
Okay.
And I can give a phone number too. Steve's phone number is 410-608-8023. And you can see it on Facebook. Steve's on Facebook, so find Optimal Baseball on Facebook. Everybody's on Facebook except me. And
what part of the area is the facility going to be? I don't need the exact address tonight.
Yeah, it's going to be in Bel Air, just south of like the Bel Air, the mall up there. It's on Route 1. It's going to be right on Route 1, so it's going to be accessible for anybody, you know, in Baltimore County, Harford County, Cecil County. So it's literally going to be anywhere from 10 or 15 minutes in that Bel Air, Foston, Joppa area, or maybe 20, 25 minutes from Eastern Baltimore County. So, yeah, it's going really well. So I'm just going to try to, now that the season's over and it looks like I'm out of the broadcasting business, I'm just going to jump in with Steve, and we're just going to try to blow this thing up and really see what we can do, and hopefully help a lot of guys along the way be able to get, you know, ready to actually do the things that they may not realize that they're not physically able to do. Again, it's hitting and pitching. It's, you know, I'm just so excited about the whole opportunity to do this, because, as I said, 3 years ago, I'm like, it's a bunch of phooey. And now I'm like, no, I was a bunch of phooey.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting that you started with that, with the pitch strike one, that if you had known this, it's sort of that kind of information again. If you understood it, you wouldn't have resisted it. And that's where most of the resistance to analytical approaches are, because we're old fuddy-duddies and don't know it, and we get scared.
Well, he didn't have the information. The information was there, and it wasn't given to him.
Yeah,
and that's what's too bad. Well, with this facility, DJ, is it for anybody? I mean, can big league guys come and learn from this?
Oh, absolutely.
College,
absolutely. I mean,
little leaguers.
Some of the big league players. We don't have any big league players working with us now. We do have some guys in college, but it's anywhere from 8 or 9 years old all the way through. The earlier we get them, just like anytime, the earlier you get them, the better. And again, it's all functional strength. It's using your own body weight, balance, medicine ball, just understanding how our body parts are independent and how we need to make sure that they sequence properly. And so, yeah, we have, and the best gains, of course, are the ones we see that come to us early. The ones that we get at 8, 9, 10 years old.
Yeah, they got a better chance.
They get it quicker because they have no bad habits.
Right.
They're like sponges. You get somebody who's 16 years old, even though obviously we can help somebody who's 16 or 17 years old. But the earlier you get them, the better. And this is something you do year round. It's a once a week thing. You come in, they have to work on it on their own at home, just like they should. But once we teach them what they need to do, then that work they do at home, really it emphasizes what they need to do. And then they got to come in and see us because we need to make sure they're doing it the right way. Because if you're just doing it, that may not necessarily help you out.
Right.
You need to be doing it the exact right way.
How excited are you to be teaming up with your son doing this? Is that part of this?
I don't know if he's excited about it, but I'm excited about it.
At Dave Johnson's sense of humor, I got to tell you before we let you go, and we'll try and get Steve on in a couple of weeks to talk about this as well.
Yeah,
but Ross, you'll get a kick out of this. You look at the map of where Dave Johnson pitched. He pitched a lot: Buffalo, Indianapolis, but he pitched in two places that I was so romanticized that he pitched in Vancouver, where I
Right.
saw an actual major league game in Vancouver about 30 years ago. But you also pitched in Hawaii. Now that's really where I romanticized Dave Johnson. What was it like? And he ends up telling me the story about, well, the being there was okay, but my wife and the cost of living,
Oh, yeah.
pick it
Well,
up on.
it was awful because, you know, I was making $1,600 a month. So
Yeah.
with my mobile home in Williams Estates down in drive-in, and the ground rent and the gas and electric and a car payment, that ate up the $1,000 or $1,100 that I cleared from my check. So now I'm in Hawaii trying
Right.
to live with my wife there. That was not a lot of fun. So, and the worst part about it is, and Ross understands this even more, is that, you know, the AAA clubs, you have about, I don't know, about a third or more of them, maybe 40% of the guys who've been to the big leagues at some point, up and down, wherever. And once you get that first cup of coffee and you get on the 40-man roster, your salary goes up dramatically, as opposed to a guy like my first year at AAA was Hawaii. So I was making, you know, literally about $8,000 for the whole season. And it's really tough to live in Honolulu
Yeah, really.
for $8,000 a year. And
Yeah.
meanwhile, all that money was going to spend for my bills back home in Baltimore because
Right.
those bills didn't stop.
It's
You
so
didn't use
funny.
you didn't use any of that for surfing, did you?
You know,
Yeah, you pitch a little bit, surf some.
no
That's some
surfing.
guys.
I don't even know if I saw the beaches watch ET. I couldn't afford to go downstairs in the water.
Yeah, really.
I so romanticized it, and then he punctured it like that. Dave, we appreciate it. Dave, I'm not so sure your broadcasting career is over. The pandemic had a lot to do with that. And hopefully maybe one of these days, you and I will be sitting next to Mel Anton and in front of the cameras. I won't bet my house on it, but I wouldn't say it's a definite.
No.
Thank you for doing this, Dave. Really
Yeah, thanks,
appreciate it.
DJ. Appreciate it, buddy.
And
Yeah,
best
guys,
of
no
luck.
problem.
It's optimal
Baseball performance. Yeah.
optimal baseball performance. All right, we'll look out for that, and we'll get Steve Johnson on in a couple weeks. Thank you very
All right.
much. For Ross Grimsley and Dave Johnson, I'm Stan the Fan, and we'll see you Wednesday night. Barry Stein and I will have the head coach of Towson men's basketball on, Pat Scarry, right here on Facebook Live. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, DJ.